All right, so welcome to the Simply Creating Revit Family webinar. My name is Philip Charlson. I'm an application engineer here at Managed Design. I've been here for about 8 years. Overall, I've been an application engineer for nearly 15 years. In that amount of time, I've had about 14 years plus of experience with the Revit products, so I concentrate on a lot of the architectural and the MEP components. As you can see, I am a Revit certified professional, which is a user-based certification that all of you can attain. I'm also a implementation certified expert, so I know how to get the product implemented within companies. And I'm also a Revit certified instructor for Autodesk. So one of the few of those. So I'm actually the only one in the state of Minnesota that has all 3 of those certifications. So kind of know what I'm talking about. So today's topics, obviously we're going through families, but when do we start, thinking about creating families? We're going to be talking about the basics of family creation. I'm going to be creating a very simple parametric model. I'm going to show you how to go in and create your reference planes, add constraints, add some parameters. I'm also going to go in and add and apply some materials to your families. And then I'm also going to show a little bit about connectors for MEP objects. So I know there may be some that are architecture and some in the MEP side that may be attending, maybe even some structure side. So I'm going to concentrate on creating a very simple family, but it's going to show you how to get started with your own family creation within Revit. Also, another quick plug here. If you like what I'm showing here today, we do have a 2-day Revit content creation class coming up in August here at our Edina office. So if you are interested in attending that, you can always contact your salesperson or push your BIM manager, CAD manager to have them send you over to the class. All right, so we're going to get into Revit here. For that to pop up on the screen here. All right, so I'm starting in Revit 2017. So for some of you, maybe you don't have 2017 loaded yet. There's going to be just some very slight differences, but as far as Revit content creation goes, it's stayed about the same for a number of years. They've made a couple tweaks here and there, but the basic functionality is going to be the same from release to release. One thing that I do suggest is when you are creating some Revit content to think about which product release that you want to be creating them in, because when you start those projects, you know that they always have to stay within the same release. So architecture, MEP, structure, if you're working with different companies on a project, they all have to stay within that same release number. So if it's a 2016 project, make sure you're developing your families in a 2016 or maybe even back to a 2015 version. As far as when you want to go and create your content, now obviously Autodesk Revit has a number of out-of-the-box content components, which there's a lot of different components within there, but obviously it doesn't have everything within the program. So what I do is I try to push people to look for content out on Autodesk Seek as their next best location to find that content. Everything on Autodesk Seek is pretty well done. There are a checklist that people have to kind of go through to get their content up on Seek. Also, you'll definitely find a lot more manufacturer-specific content out there. If you can't find content out on Seek, then I would suggest looking at specific manufacturer sites. Look for the Revit content, BIM content, 3D content, so those locations on websites. And as a last resort to download Revit content, pre-created content, you might look at some other Revit specific content sites, but be very careful with those. If you are downloading anything from there, make sure that you check it and make sure that it is good content. I know there are some sites out there that you can have user created content that anybody can go and create something and throw on that website. And then obviously there are some paid websites that you can get catalog type libraries as well. So if you can't find those as good sources, now we need to start looking at creating our own types of families. Now within Revit there's really 3 different types of families. You have your system families, which are your walls, your ceilings, your floors, and you can't actually go in and create them outside of a project. They have to be built within a project. You duplicate those and then you go in and customize them within a particular project. We also have in-place families, and those are created within your project, and those are kind of live type families. Now the problem with an in-place family is they can really only be used at one particular project. You can't pull them out of a project and then reuse them within other projects. So our main focus today is going to be on our third option, the component families. So those are going to be obviously reusable type families for your projects. Now when starting a family within Revit, you need to choose what type of template that you want to use. So in my Revit here, I'm going to go under the families and go in and create a new family within here. So when I click on new, it goes out to where we have the family templates. So you're going to see that we've got a lot of different types of templates, and a lot of times when you're starting it, maybe you don't exactly know which template to start out from. Now if you're going to create maybe a light fixture, you'd probably go down to a light fixture and go in and select one of those types down there, or a piece of mechanical equipment. But if you're still kind of unsure, what you may want to do is start with the generic model type. So you see that there's still a number of those types within here. And if you're in the architecture side, you could possibly choose a specific components that it's going to attach to. As you can see, we got a ceiling based, a floor based, a roof based, or wall based. So on the architecture side, you could potentially use those. If you're on the MEP or structure side, you don't place those types of objects within your project. So you're going to use more of either a face-based or a freestanding type. So you'll see within here we have a face-based type, and the generic model is kind of your free floating type of Revit template. So I'm going to start out with the generic model, and you'll see that it is a .rft file. That is the template file extension. So I'll go and open this one up. Now once you do open up a new template here for a family, what you can do is you can go and specify either now or you can do it later, it doesn't matter when, but you will want to do this eventually, is you want to go up here to the family category and parameters and specify what category that you want it listed under. As you can see right now, it's listed as a generic model. You don't want to ever keep anything set to that generic model, because that's where your visibility graphics comes into play. So if you want this thing to not show or to show specifically, right now it's listed under generic models. So I'm actually going to create it as a piece of furniture instead. So if I go and click on that, now the visibility graphics will be able to control it as a furniture type item. All right, so I'll go OK out of that. Now within the design area, you'll see that we have a couple reference planes here, and these are 2 reference planes that you want to keep. You don't want to delete. You'll notice that they're even pinned down. And when I click on one here, you'll see that we have a center left right, and if I click on the other one here, we have a center front back. Now this is actually in relation to what we have over here in the project browser. Now the project browser within a family creation is much shorter than when you're actually in a project. So for the elevations, you'll see that instead of a north, south, east, and west, we have a back, front, left, and right option within here. So that's going to give us the different views of the particular object that we're going to go in and create. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to go in and start building what's called the skeleton shape of my design. So it's kind of the major dimensions of the particular object. And what I'm going to create here is just kind of a simple table for my project. So I'm going to go to my Create tab, and I'm going to go over here to my reference plane. And what I'm going to do is simply go in and create a couple reference planes going vertical here, and it's going to be parallel to the already created reference plane. And I'll go in and create a couple that are horizontal here as well. And notice that I try to get them lined up. You're going to find out that when you are creating these families that you will create a lot of reference planes. Reference planes are very important when you're creating your families because they're going to control the geometry that we eventually create here in a little bit. Now after I go in and create my reference planes, I want to go in and add some dimensions to those. So I'm going to go up to my Annotate tab here and click on my Aligned Dimension. And I'm going to create a string of dimensions here and go in and drop those in right above. And right above that, we have a little EQ symbol. I'm going to set those as equal. And I'm going to create one more here that's going to be an overall dimension and place that right above it. And I'll do the same thing over here on the side. Create my equality and create my overall dimension. Now the reason why you go in and create these equality dimensions is that when you're creating your particular family, you want it to be able to flex, and typically flex from the middle. If you obviously want to go in and create some additional sizes of a particular component, you want to kind of build it off of the center point, which is going to be our insertion point for the particular object. Now after I go in and create these dimensions, I want to go in and apply some parameters to these objects. Okay, so up at the top here I got a 6-foot dimension. If I go and click on that, up at the top here you'll see that the label has changed. This is changing from 2016 to 2017. Prior to that it was actually in the options bar here. So if I want to go in and create a new one, I click on Create Parameter. And I want to go ahead and specify what this parameter is going to be here. So I'm just going to type in length for my first parameter. You'll see that discipline, common, type of parameter, length, and it's going to be grouped under dimensions. And I'm going to show you that in a little bit here. This is going to be a type parameter, meaning if I go in and create this particular table, it's going to be specific to this type. We don't want it to be an instance, meaning we can go in and change it to whatever size that we want. When we bring it into a project, we want to get a little bit more specific with it. Another option that you have down at the bottom here, you have a tooltip description. If you click on that, you can actually give a tooltip as to what parameter that you're going in and creating. This one's pretty obvious here, so we don't need to go in and create a tooltip for this particular instance. So I'll go and click OK here, and you'll see that it adds that parameter right in front of the dimension. So once you go in and add that parameter, it allows us to go in and click on this dimension and change it. Now if you try to do that within a project, you get a different dialog box. This is really the only time that you can actually click on a dimension and physically change that dimension and see the objects change with that. So you can only do that within the family and when you have a parameter tied to it. So if I come down here, I'm going to do the same thing. Go in and add our create parameter, and we'll call this one just simply width. Again, type, dimensions, click OK, and I'll go in and change this one here. We'll change that to 3. Alright, so I've got my length and I've got my width here. Now I'm going to change my view to a front elevation because I want to go in and set my height to this as well. So when I switch over to it, you'll see that we have a reference level. So this could be any level that you go in and place this particular object on. So it could be a first floor, second floor, third floor type instance. So what I want to do is I want to go in and specify a couple heights within here. So I'll go back to my create another reference plane, and again just simply create a couple horizontal reference planes coming across here. Alright, now I'll go and create a couple more dimensions. So from the very top one to the bottom, I'm going to click off of that, and I'm going in and creating another one here from this one to this one here. So this is going to actually be the thickness of the tabletop for my table. So if I go and click on this one, go and change that dimension. Let's say I want it to be, we'll go 2 inches here. And for this one, we're going to change that so that we have a height parameter. So with this one here, the 2-inch dimension, whenever I have just a dimension, no parameter tied to it, I always want to go in and lock that in. So the 2 inches is going to stay consistent. So if I go in and adjust my height to a different height here, you'll see that both of those lines change with the change of the dimension that I've got there. So if I go in and add a tabletop to this, that tabletop will adjust up or down from where I go in and create that. Alright, now I'll go back to my reference level again. So back to my floor plan. And now what I want to do is I want to go in and start adding my geometry to my design. So if I go to my create, and we have forms listed within here. We have extrusion, blend, revolve, sweep, and swept blend. The majority of the creations that you build is going to be an extrusion typically. Second would probably be a sweep option if you're creating maybe some kind of a trim to a particular object. You can go in and create the path and then go in and create the profile that you want for that sweep. The extrusion is basically you creating a shape and then extruding in a specific distance. The other ones here, blend, will blend 2 different shapes into each other. As you can see, just simply with the tooltip, we got kind of a little hexagon shape there into a circle, and it basically blends those 2 shapes together. A revolve is basically creating from an axis, creating half of a profile, and then creating the 360 radius to create that revolution type object. And we also have a swept blend, which is basically a combination of the sweep and the blend tools. So with that, you go in and create 2 profiles, and you go in and create the swept path, and it basically follows that path and changes the shape from one shape to the other. Now beyond that, we do have void forms, which can actually go in and remove solid objects that you've already created. If you want to go in and create some cutouts within objects, say if you're creating some casework and you want to go and create some holes within that casework, maybe some kind of access panels or something, we would go in and create a void extrusion to remove the solid geometry out of that. Now back to what we're doing here with the table, I want to go in and use my extrusion tool. And after you create, or you start with your extrusion tool, you want to choose a draw method. Now, obviously we have a number of different choices within here. In this case, I can use my rectangle tool, or I could use my pick lines option. I'm going to use the rectangle just because it's kind of the easier option here. If I start by picking on the intersection from my 2 reference planes and then go to the opposite corner where my other 2 reference planes are, after that, it goes in and creates my 4 lines. Also, it shows us some padlocks here, and we want to make sure that we lock those to the reference planes. So what this is going to do is if we go in and start adjusting those dimensions from our parameters, it'll go in and adjust our geometry because we're locking those onto the reference planes. So if I go in and finish this, it goes in and creates some solid geometry, but I need to go back to my front elevation because I need to go in and adjust where this is going to be located at. So with it still highlighted here, you can see that it has little grips, and I want to concentrate on the one that's on the top and on the bottom here. So if I go and grab onto this grip, I can drag that up and have it snap right to the reference plane. When I let go of it, I can go in and lock that in place to that reference plane. I'll go and grab this one, drag that up, and lock that in place here as well. So when I click off of that and go back to my 3D view, you can see that we have somewhat of a tabletop here, but right now it's currently floating in midair. So we need to go in and create some legs for this as well. So if I go back to my reference level, I'm going to create a few more reference planes. So as I mentioned before, you will create a lot of reference planes when it comes to creating families. So this is why I try to be a little bit more ordered as I'm creating these, so kind of getting them lined up here. So a lot of people I've noticed when they go and create families, they'll just kind of click point and not really pay attention to the lengths of them. And it can get a little bit confusing once you get a little further into a more complicated type family. So I'm going to go in and add some more dimensions here. And you'll see that some of them are a little bit off here. Well, I got one at 3, we got 3 at 4 here. So I want to go in and add another label. And we're going to call this one the leg width. And again, this is going to be a type. So I've got that one set at 4. Now I can actually just do a control and select my other 3 dimensions. And up here I can click on the drop down and choose leg width. And you'll see that it gets added to all of them, and now they are all listed as 4-inch. Alright, so now after I got that created, now I can go in and create the legs for my design here. So if I go to create an extrusion, again, I'll go in and lock those in and finish that up there. So if I go to my front, again, I'll go on and drag that up, lock that to the reference plane. I like to pull this one up actually and then drag it back down so that I have something to lock to. I could also use my align tool. That would also work if you want to use that as an option. So I do this for each one here. Now you could do this as in one shot, create all 4 in one, but I like to actually create them as separate type components. I guess it's just my preference here in this case. Alright, we got 2 more here. And last one. Alright, so if we take a look at this in our 3D view, we got a very ugly looking table, not very beautiful looking, but it could probably serve its purpose. If you're wanting to create a very basic type family, that is about as basic as you can get. Now after you've got this created, you really want to test it out, make sure that everything's kind of locked into place. If you go in and start adjusting some of your dimensions, that it moves properly. So if I go back up to the top here in my ribbon and click on Family Types, and I'm going to shrink this down here so we can kind of see, put that right up here. So you'll notice that we have some dimensions here: height, leg width, length, and width. So we can go in and change these dimensions here. If I can change that to a 4, click Apply, you can see how that shifts up. If I bring it down to 2, shortens that up there. If I change my leg width here to 2 inch, click Apply, shrinks those up. So basically I'm just testing this out to make sure that it works properly. Now you're going to want to do this often, kind of in stages. If you are creating a more complex type family, you don't want to wait till the very end of creating your family and come to find out you're having all kinds of weird things happening, stuff isn't moving the way that you want. Now you got to kind of go back and try to figure out, okay, where did I forget to attach some of these objects? So check this often as you are creating your different families. Now, after I got this created here, I want to go in and add a little bit more detail to this. I want to go ahead and add a sweep to this as well. So I'm going to go back to my reference level here, and we're going to add a little bit of an edging to our table. So I'll go back to the create, and I'll go ahead and create a sweep. So when you go ahead and create a sweep, you have 2 things that you need to do. You need to create your path, and you need to create your profile. So over here in the sweep panel, you'll see that we have a sketch path and we have a pick path option. Also, we have the profile area here, but it's not giving us access to that yet because it wants us to create a path for this. So if I go and click on pick path, I could click on my edges here, or if I went back here, extend that out here, I can do a sketch path as well, and I could actually go in and draw my path. Now in this case, it's actually going to be easier to sketch my path because I can actually use my rectangle option again, and I can go in and sketch along my edges here. So I bring my cursor out. Again, you want to go in and lock this in place. So if we do start to flex this, we want our edging for the table to move along with that. So if we didn't have that locked in place, this would stay exactly where we created it at. So I'll go ahead and finish this up. Now it gives us an opportunity to go in and add our profiles. Alright, so I want to go in and edit a profile. Now when I click on edit profile, it's going to give us an option to look at it in a particular view. So we have a left and a right view. Okay, so how is it determining that? Well, if you look on the actual part here, we have just the shortest of reference planes here, and there's a little red dot. So this is actually where you will be creating your profile. So we actually want to look at either the left or right side so that we can look at that reference plane head on. So it doesn't really matter which side that you work from here. If I go and click on open view, do a zoom extents, there's the little dot there. So even though it's right at the ground level, that's not critical. We're actually going to be doing our work right up here. So if I want to go and create this little sketch here, we'll come out and I'll go out, say 3 inches. And this does have to be in an enclosed profile. You can't have it open. I'll go and add a little curved piece in here as well, like so. And we'll go ahead and trim that up. Oops. There we go. So I'll finish that up. So that finishes the profile. I still have to go in and click Finish Edit Mode to actually finish out my sketch as well. So there's actually 2 check marks there to go in and finish that up. So now we take a look at it, and we got a little bit of an edging there. Maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Maybe we go back and modify it a little bit more. We could even put a little reveal in there if we wanted to. As much detail as you want to go in and add to it. The next thing I want to do is I want to go in and add a little bit of material to this, because if we go switch this over to realistic, we got an ugly looking gray table here. So what I want to do is I want to go in and click on one of my objects here, and over in the properties we have a material area, and it says by category. Now the easy way out might be just, clicking on here and going out to your materials and choosing material from there. But better option is actually clicking on the little button just off to the right of that. We got the Associate Family Parameters. And what we can do is we can actually go and create a new family parameter here. And I'm just going to call this one Table Material. All right, so I go and click OK. Click OK again. Now what I can do is I can actually go in and apply that table material to my other objects within here as well. All right, so I click on each of those and I click on that same button again. So there's our table material. I go ahead and click OK. So now table material has been assigned to all of those features of our family. So now instead of me having to click on each one and changing it in the properties, I can go back to my family types, and now we have table material listed within here, and it says by category. So in here, now I want to click on my material list, and I want to choose a specific material. Now when you are working with these families, you'll notice that our material list is quite a bit shorter than when you're in a project setting, because it doesn't want to fill up your family with a whole bunch of different materials that you're never going to use for that particular object. So it gives you some default ones within here, but if you really want to define something, up at the very top you have a search area, and I want to go ahead and type in wood here and give it, give me the list of all the wood type materials. So down below we can take a look in our catalog and find a particular material that we want to go in and use for this. So let's say I want to go in and use a mahogany type. So go in and add this in to our project, and I'll go ahead and click OK. So now we're going to set mahogany as our table material. We go in and apply it, and it applies it to all of those particular objects. So if I want to go in and create a couple different types within here, up at the very top for our type name, I'll go ahead and click on New Type here, and I'm just going to go ahead and type in mahogany. So that's going to be one type. I also want to go back here, and let's say I want to go and create one for oak. I'm going to change this, and I'm going to go in and add oak as another option. So we'll just do we'll do a red oak here. Apply that. So now we have oak as another option. So we actually have two separate types within here. So that's kind of the power of creating a parameter for your materials as well. And instead of clicking on each component and changing each component manually, we can go in and set a parameter for that particular material, apply it to all of your objects, and be able to change it pretty quick and easy from one type of material to another. So I'll go and OK out of this. And after I go and create a family, I want to go ahead and give it a name here. So I'll go ahead and save this, and I'm just going to save it right on my desktop here. We'll call this one Table. And I want to go ahead and test this out within a project. So what I suggest when you are creating these families is do not just simply go in and drop it right into a live project. Go in and create a test project that you can go in and drop in your test families before they become live. So if I go here, we'll go open, and got kind of buried in here. You see I've got an architectural test project, a 2017 project. So when I go and open this, it's a very simple family. I've just got 4 walls. I've got a floor in there. I've got a ceiling within there. I've got a couple windows within there. I've also got a couple sections within it. So what I want to do is I want to go in and insert this into my project. So go Insert, Load Family, go out to my desktop here. I'll load in my table. And then I'll go ahead and place that as a component. So there's my table mahogany, and I got a table oak, and I'll go ahead and drop that in place here. So if I go to my section cut, I can see how it looks within a section. I go back to my level 1 here. I may want to go in and create a camera view, see how that looks within my design. I'll go and change it to a realistic mode so that I can see how those materials are coming in. I could even possibly do a ray trace to see how it comes in when you actually do the render within it. So basically you're checking it out to make sure that it works properly within a project before you make it a live project. Now if I go back to my table, a couple things that I like to do. I've created some content for Autodesk Seek, and Autodesk Seek does have kind of a guide that you can go through and has very specific things that you need to do before submitting it to Seek. But I like to do this really for all the families. Before I go in and finish up the project, I'll go to my view 1 here and make sure that it's in the right isometric. So you can see right here I got top, front, and right. So I click in the corner. I like to rename this and set this as preview. I also go in and change my scale here to 1.5 to 1 foot. I change my detail level to fine. I change my visual style to shaded. Make sure that everything is looking good there. And after I do that, I go in and right click on my view cube and I go on and set this current view as home. And also in my manage tab, I go in and purge unused. So you want to purge that until you get down to 0 here. So if I click OK, purge unused, okay, and it's still got 1 there, purge unused, now down to 0. So you're basically shrinking up this file as much as you can possibly can to get it down to the very small size so that when you start using it within your projects, your project sizes don't get larger and larger. So you're kind of controlling your project size later down the road here. Now last thing before kind of finishing up the save, if I click in my application menu, go to save as, family. So we got our table right there. I click on the options, I compact the file, I go to my thumbnail preview, switch that over to preview, which is the last view that I've got within here, and then I regenerate if view sheet is not up to date. Click OK, and I go in and resave that. Now if I just go back here to my Explorer view here, just to let you know what size that we're dealing with. Okay, now this is a pretty basic family. So the original file size was 360 KB, and after the purge, which didn't really take out very much, it went down to 348 KB. So not very much change from that, but sometimes you can cut it down to half the size of its original save. So good thing to do there. All right, so that is a table. Now I wanted to go in and talk a little bit about connectors as well. So this is more for the MEP side and not necessarily the architecture side, although on the architecture side sometimes you may want to specify where you have connectors for objects. Now for a table, I'm not going to go in and add a connector to this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually open up a separate file here. Let me get out of this view here. All right, so I've got a gas-fired furnace here, and this one actually has some connectors to it. Now, maybe you've noticed when you've gone to your out-of-the-box library that you have for some of the categories an architectural folder and you have an MEP folder. So when you jump into those, you'll see that there are a lot of the same types of families but maybe the MEP side has a few more as far as electrical type components and mechanical components, plumbing type components. And what you're going to see is that the MEP components have connectors for them. So you'll see here with this gas-fired furnace that we have some connectors showing within here. So those will be the green X's here. They also have little arrows pointing from them. So we have some piping connectors. We have some HVAC connectors. Fortunately, I didn't pick one that has some electrical connectors, but we'd have some electrical connection type points here as well. The arrows are actually pointing towards what is going to be connecting to them. So it could be ductwork, could be piping, could be some type of conduit type connection on the electrical side, but that is where those components are coming from. So if you have them reversed, obviously we wouldn't have pipe or ductwork coming through our furnace. We'd need to go in and make sure that that gets flipped to the right direction. So as you can see when I click on it, we do have a flip arrow within there. If we're adding new connectors, if I go up to my create, we have our connectors located right up here. We have electrical, duct, pipe, cable tray, and conduit connectors. So if I go in and add a duct connector, it wants to choose a face or work plane. So when I move my cursor over edges, you can see it goes in and selects those particular faces. Come down here and it's actually picking the circle face. So that's why you'll see for a lot of these mechanical equipment or electrical equipment, they'll create the little components coming out of there so that it actually picks the true face, and you can actually create it that true size of that connector that's coming out at that point. So the critical components when it comes to piping info, it's going to be the size or the flow. For duct info, also size and flow. Electrical, it's going to be voltage, phase, and demand factor. So when I do click on one of these connectors, you'll see for the properties that we have mechanical properties in here, flow configuration, flow direction, classifications, and we got our loss method within here. Got our flow value. If I click down here, now we got a different type component here. So now we're looking at a fluid type component. So we've got a different parameters specified for each of these. So electrical would again have their own types of connectors within a design. So again, this is obviously getting into a little bit more advanced. Obviously for the MEP side, you need to add these connectors if you want to go in and add piping, ductwork, and work your circuits for the electrical side of things. For the architecture and the structure side, obviously you're more concerned with the physical features of the objects and not the connectors. MEP, their biggest concern is the connectors and the overall sizes of those. If there's anybody on this webinar that is a manufacturer and is looking into starting to create families of their manufactured components, I would suggest scaling it down from the way that it's actually built to the way that an architect or an MEP engineer wants to see it within their project. So they do not want to see every nut and bolt on the objects within here. There could be some instances where you can get a little bit more detailed within objects, but with all the details that are added, it's just going to add to the size of the family. So if you got something that's going to be over a meg, think of how many times that's going to be put into your project, because that's all going to add up to the size of your project, and opening, closing, switching between views is going to take longer for those. All right, so that concludes the webinar. If we have any questions regarding the family creation, go in and post them within the question area in your webinar. Again, we do have a family creation class coming up in August in our Edina office. So typically what we do through that is we go through the basics. We cover a little bit more than what I did here today. The second day we kind of treat that as more of a lab type instance where you bring in your own type components, stuff that you've got specs on, PDFs. If it's AutoCAD drawings, bring those in and we go in and create those within the class. So you're kind of doing two things. You're learning how to create your content and you're actually building your content that you can take back with you when you're done with the class. So we kind of bring up each of those types of instances for a class session. All right, so a question is, can you go over the saving options again? Okay, so as far as saving your project, or not saving your project, but saving your family, so this is kind of the final save option. So when I go to my application menu and go to the Save As option, and I go ahead and click on Family here, we have the Options button. And again, what I do is I do a compact file. I switch my source view to preview, which I don't have within this background one here, but I'm going to just select view 1. And I also do the regenerate if view sheet is not up to date. So again, this is going to shrink it down. And plus your thumbnail preview is when you go start searching for your families and you look at those little preview images, you know, if you don't quite know what it looks like, that will give you your preview. So that's why you want to switch it over to that view and not leave it in a plan view or an elevation type view. So I click OK and then go ahead and save that. All right. Again, for everyone, this is a recorded session. So if you do want to check it out, go to the Manage Design website. I would assume probably about a week or so for that to get up there, and you can go in and review that if you want to and take a look at some of that information again. All right, another question that came up here. So when I go to edit type and create a duplicate within a project, that is considered an in-place family? No, actually, what you're doing is you're just simply duplicating an already existing family. If I go back to, I think I still have my project open here. If I go up to my architecture tab and click on my component drop-down, we have a model in place here. And basically you select on what type of category that you want to create, and you'll see that, oh, let me create a name here. Everything will gray out. So basically what you're doing is you may be working within a particular area. Maybe you need to go in and create some kind of a bench that fits in with between a couple walls or something. That would be the good case of creating an in-place family. That bench may be a one-time situation because it's very specific to the dimensions of that particular project. So I guess I will, sorry, I was not showing my screen there, so let me just repeat that here. So I am actually back in my project again. So as I mentioned, I went back to my architecture tab, went to my component drop-down, and then chose the model in place. You choose what category that you want, specify the name, click OK, and it grays everything out. And again, you have your same Revit family creation tools up at the very top, except now you're doing it live within a project. So if I do a quick extrusion here, I may be picking on some geometry that I already have within my project. and I got my new piece of casework created within there with very little detail. All right, well, I'll stay on the line here for a couple more minutes if anybody else has any questions regarding the family creation. Thanks for attending. All right, question came up about when starting Revit 2016, you cannot find the family folder. Where is this located? So when you are creating your family, if I go to new and then family, it should take you right out to the family library. So you got a family template library. So it will be located in your C drive, program data, Autodesk, and it'll show Revit 2016 family templates, and then you have a English and multiple other languages here as well.